Hello, 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 and welcome back to Spin Cycle Live. I'm your host, Nathan Hale. Today, we've yet another great episode of this awesome show for you all today. It is August 14th, 2025, and we got some stories for you. We got Brian Stelter back in the news. We have National Guard finally taking its way into DC. We have production prices for wholesale goods are going up, and we have a dip in mortgage rates. So without further ado, let's get right into this. Make sure that you are following me on all the social media platforms, on X, on Instagram, on YouTube, Rumble, and TikTok, on all of them. The show goes out every Tuesday and Thursday on Rumble, YouTube, and X. You can watch live there. If you missed a show, you want to go back and watch an old one, you can watch them all on YouTube and Rumble as well. They're still up there. You can also scroll back through my X page if you want to go see all that. Make sure to subscribe to my Substack as well. You can find the link to that in the description down below or in the bio of my X account. I have a story going up on Substack very, very soon, so keep an eye out for that. Hopefully by the end of the week. I'm thinking either Friday or Saturday at this point, so we'll kind of see when that goes up, and then I plan on posting a video on YouTube as kind of reading through it and then adding a little bit more context or details to it. So if you prefer to watch kind of my thoughts and all that, that video will go up probably around a week or so after the story goes up. So be the first one to hear about it. Subscribe to me on Substack. Read my writing. Please do so. But let's get right into our very first story of the week. This comes from Blaze Media. So this is all about the Smithsonian. So Blaze Media writes that Brian Stelter melts down as Trump makes the Smithsonian great again. So the left has been flipping a lid because of what is happening with the Smithsonian right now. We talked about in an earlier episode that I think there were talks of it had to do with the Trump impeachments, right? I think it had to do with the Trump impeachments, and Trump wanted them to take out the section on his impeachment, and I took a little bit of an issue with that, and we discussed it on this show where my issue was it's a part of our history. It should be a part of the Smithsonian. The man did get impeached twice by the House of Representatives. And even though I think it was totally a farce and unwarranted and unneeded, it still did happen in our history. It still deserves to be on display in the museum. But it seems that they have taken a bit of a more generalized stance on getting certain ideologies out of the museums and getting certain characters unglorified in some museums. So let's read this and we'll discuss. So, the left's agenda, quote, long march through the institutions was a great success. Since the time that slogan was coined in the late 1960s, numerous businesses, churches, law enforcement agencies, schools, and other organizations have been transformed into incubators for radical activists and amplifiers for anti-Western campaigns. That's totally true. You know, I'll give the left credit. They've done a great job at really just sinking themselves into our institutions like the cancer they are and just infesting everything in our modern society here in America. And it's high time that we were finally pushing back against that. That's why I say it's finally cool again to be a conservative, because it's gotten to such an extreme where this ideology is so crazy that the people fighting back against it are actually the rebels. They're actually the ones going against the grain now, even though the left started back in the 1960s as, oh, they're the ones who are pushing back. They're the ones who are the rebels. They're the ones who are pushing back against the conservatives. So it's kind of flipped in that sense. So the marchers have, however, been stopped in their tracks by President Donald Trump, who has supercharged conservatives' requests of American institutions and normalcy advocates, corresponding war on DEI, critical race theory, gender ideology, and anti-Semitism. Liberals, including CNN's chief media analyst Brian Stelter, appear concerned that the president might successfully liberate the Smithsonian in time for America's 250th birthday as part of his broader campaign. Well, Brian Stelter is always he's always concerned about anything that Donald Trump is doing. So Brian Stelter is a complete laughingstock. Anyone who takes him seriously, I question your judgment. So how it started. The president issued an executive order on March 27th titled Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History. Over the past decade, Americans have witnessed a concentrated and widespread effort to rewrite our nation's history, replacing objective fact with a distorted narrative driven by ideology rather than truth, Trump wrote. Quote, this revisionist movement seeks to undermine the remarkable achievements of the United States by casting its founding principles and historical milestones in a negative light, continued the president. Quote, under this historical revision, our nation's unparalleled legacy of advancing liberty, individual rights, and human happiness is reconstructed as inherently racist, sexist, oppressive, or otherwise irredeemably flawed. He's absolutely true. I mean, we're seeing time and time again that our founders are being vilified by historians as well as in the media, that people cannot see past the fact that they had the opportunity when they found the United States, for example, to ban slavery, but they didn't. There's so much more that went into so many things that we vilify our founding fathers for and our history for that people do not take into account today, right? You can go look all that up for yourself. It's not hard to find. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. But there's so much more that went into so many of these issues that we look back on and frown on today that had you been in the context of the late 1700s, the early 1800s, even the early 1900s, that you would have likely done the same thing, or you would have seen the rationale in not doing that thing, right? So, you know what I'm talking about there. So Trump blasted his predecessor's administration for advancing, quote, this corrosive ideology and identified several examples of the Smithsonian housed anti-American propaganda at issue, including the National Museum of African American Heritage and Cultural's assessment that the nuclear family, rugged individualism, self-reliance, prioritization of work over play, emphasis on rationale, linear thinking, punctuality, decisiveness, and a future-oriented outlook are, quote, aspects and assumptions of whiteness and white culture in the United States. How terrible. Imagine telling this to the black freedom fighters of the 1960s. Right? Imagine telling this to the people who championed the civil rights movement, that all these things they stood for, the nuclear family, self-reliance, linear thinking, punctuality, decisiveness, all individualism, all of these things were in fact just assumptions of whiteness and white culture in the United States, right? It's so saddening, right? And this is why I always say, how terrible must it be if you are a black liberal to be constantly told that having a family, that being self-reliant, that being proud of who you are, that being self-resistant, that just being a normal person in society is somehow an assumption of whiteness and white culture, right? Our side doesn't do that, right? We don't tell people that, oh, because they have a family, that, oh, that's just a white thing, right? In fact, we tell everyone that they should have a family, that it should be something you strive for, that rugged individualism, that self-reliance, that prioritization of work over play is in fact something that we should strive for. How degenerating must it be to be on the left and constantly hear these things? All right. So the president directed Vice President J.D. Vance, a member of the Smithsonian Board of Regnants, to work with Lindsay Halligan, Special Assistant to the President and Director of the Office of Management and Budget, Russell Voigt, to see to the removal of, quote, improper ideology from the Smithsonian Institution, its 21 museums, and 14 education and research centers, and the National Zoo. So the first phase of this review concerns 8 museums, including the National Museum of American History, Natural History, African American History and Culture, and the American Indian. Other Smithsonian museums will be assessed in the second phase of the review. So in the review, Trump's team will, quote, assess tone, historical framing, and alignment with American ideals when it comes to public-facing content, interview curators and senior staff to better understand the selection process, exhibition approval workflows, and any framework currently guiding exhibition content, review the current future exhibitions, especially those planned for the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, and look to the development of consistent curatorial guidelines. So Mike Gonzalez, a senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation, told Blaze News that, quote, it really is a colonoscopy of the Smithsonian. Gonzalez noted that in addition to glossing over or ignoring key aspects of what makes American exceptional, such as its recognition of natural rights, the Smithsonian continues to push leftist propaganda, engage in lies of omission, and glorify radicals such as Angela Davis. So Angela Davis is a former Black Panther and recipient of the Soviet Union's Lenin Peace Prize, who was once accused of supplying weapons to a black supremacist who went on to murder senior court justice Harold Hale and 2 inmates. Quote, she's an awful person, but she gets 4 exhibits and Justice Clarence Thomas gets none, said Gonzalez. Absolutely right. So Brian Stelter asked CNN's remaining viewers this week, quote, do you want Trump, White House political appointees, political aides, vetting the tone and the content of the framing of the museum's exhibits? That is the question on the table here. Stelter suggested that some say the White House's initiatives, quote, sound like a Stalinist purge. Sounds like something out of a history book about regimes trying to control information. So, you know, the left will always point out. So first off, Donald Trump could come out with a cure for cancer today, and the left would find a way of turning it into a negative. Let's just be clear about that. The other thing I'd like to point out is you heard Brian Stelter say, hey, do you really trust the Trump administration to go through and do all these things? Well, frankly, I didn't trust the Biden administration to go through and do these exact same things, right? The Biden administration had oversight over the Smithsonian Museum for 4 years, right? Obama had oversight of it for 8 years. I wouldn't trust Obama to run out this either. So saying like, oh, do you really trust the opposition to go about doing this is just a complete non-starter, right? Because you can just throw that right back to the other side and say, okay, well, I don't trust a Democrat to do it if I'm a Republican. And if you're a Democrat, you don't trust a Republican to do it. So it's just like, that's just a complete non-starter. We can't get anywhere with that, right? What we really should be saying is, hey, what exactly is it that Trump wants to change, right? What is in there that he's wanting to remove, and what is he wanting to replace it with? So we talked earlier in the show about the whole impeachment exhibit, right? And we discussed in that, right? I personally don't think that the impeachment exhibit should have been removed, or should be removed. I'm not sure if it has been removed yet, or if it's still on the docket to be removed. I haven't really looked into it yet, to be honest with you. But I don't necessarily think that should be removed. I think that should stay. It is a part of our history. It is a part of Donald Trump's first presidency that it did happen to him. And I, in fact, think it should be on display that the American people can see how a political party tried to absolutely demonize and go after Donald Trump. And after it's all said and done, I truly believe there should be an exhibit in the museum that is about everything that Tulsi Gabbard is unveiling with how Barack Obama tried to ruin Donald Trump's character by pushing out false dossiers and creating the Russia hoax, right? That should 100% be a part of our museum, just as Trump's impeachment should be as well. That being said, right, I think that should have stayed. But we're talking about, who was her name? I already forgot it. Gosh darn it. Let me look back through the article real quick. Angela Davis. So we're talking about removing Angela Davis from the Smithsonian. Winner of the Soviet Union's Lenin Peace Prize. Yeah, I don't really think that she needs to be in there, right? She's a former Black Panther who was once accused of supplying weapons to a black supremacist. Yeah, that should really be in our American Heritage Museum, guys. That really belongs in there. Just as this guy from the Heritage Foundation said that Justice Clarence Thomas doesn't get anything, right? Justice Clarence Thomas has been one of the most influential Supreme Court justices in American history, yet he doesn't get anything in there. You know, he has done more for advancing the black man in America than I'd argue Angela Davis has. That's for sure. As far as I know, Clarence Thomas never supplied a black supremacist, accused of supplying a black supremacist with weapons, or won the Soviet Lenin Prize, for that matter. So, 100%. Like, I think we should be criticizing what's being added or removed from the museum instead of saying, hey, we're criticizing the people doing the process of it. We should be criticizing what is being added or removed from it. So we'll see what happens with all that and how the museum changes, and we'll try and keep you updated if I see any updates on all of this. You know, I think the media makes such a stir over an issue like this, and then it ends up not fitting their narrative, and they just never cover it again. So keep an eye out for what happens with all this. I'll be sure to try and keep you updated if I can. But yeah, let me know what you think about all that. Do you think that Trump should be doing this, or do you think he should just like leave it alone, right? And by the way, my standards go both ways, right? If Joe Biden wanted to add a whole exhibit in there about Clarence Thomas, I'd say it was great, right? If Joe Biden wanted to add all these great exhibits into the Smithsonian that are positive for American values, that's great, right? So I'm all about the content that's being done, the actual actions being taken, over who's going out and doing it. That's why on this show we praise Democrats in this show when they do good things, right? We've done it time and time again, and we look at Republicans and poor light when they do negative things. So I'm all about the actions that are taken over your ideology or, you know, who you are as a person going out and doing them. If it's a good thing you did, great, fantastic, happy to have it. So I'm all about making the country a better place. Let's go and get into our next story. So this comes from the New York Post. So National Guard takes to the streets of D.C. in support of Trump's crime crackdown, reporting for duty. So National Guard troops began deploying to the streets of Washington, D.C. Tuesday, one day after President Trump signed an executive order aimed at addressing crime concerns in the nation's capital. Quote, D.C. National Guard reporting for duty, the U.S. Army posted on X, including a photo of several military Humvees parked near the Washington Monument on the National Mall. I'm assuming this is the photo right here. The National, sorry, excuse me, I read that. Guardsmen activated under the President's Title 32 authority were spotted posing for pictures with tourists on the first night of their deployment in the district. This could also be the photo right here. I guess this could also be the photo here too. some great photos. So, fantastic, right? I saw that there was a protest in front of the White House, and there was a reporter who was going around asking people protesting, do you think DC is a safe city? And everyone's like, oh yeah, such a safe city. It's a beautiful city, right? It's so safe. You know, like we said on the show, DC is ranked number 20th for overall crime in the United States. In fact, let's go ahead and pull up. I just want to go and pull up the actual metrics here. Let's look at this real quick, because I didn't do it on Tuesday and I regretted it. So let's see. Crime rates by city, and I believe, yeah, it was a Wikipedia article here, or a Wikipedia page. So let's go and see total crime by city. So you can see here that Memphis, Tennessee is the #1 city for total yearly rate. So this is yearly crime rates per 100,000 people. And then it's broken down into total, murder and non-negligent manslaughter, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, and then total for violent crime, and then arson, burglary, larceny, theft, motor vehicle theft, and then total for property crime. So I've just sorted this by total for all crime in the city. So Memphis, Tennessee is #1, but we can scroll down here and see that Washington, D.C. should be around here. So here's District of Columbia. So just for total crime, District of Columbia is number 33 for total crime. So they're just under Buffalo, New York, Kansas City, Missouri, Springfield, Missouri, lots of crime in Missouri apparently, and Baltimore, Maryland is above them. So Minnesota, St. Louis, all those cities, right? So they're certainly not in the top 10 for total, but they're not at the bottom either. So let's just sort by murder and manslaughter. So it actually looks like St. Louis dropped a little bit, but St. Louis used to be number 1, I believe. So, but we can see for murder and manslaughter, District of Columbia is number 10. It's the 10th most dangerous city when it comes to murder and manslaughter in the entire country. So let's see what it is for rape. So rape, Anchorage, Alaska, super high in rape apparently. So let's see here. Let's find DC. Did I skip over it? Can't be that far down. Could be that the rape issue in DC is not that high. But who knows? See, I wish I could sort by state. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it for rape. Let's see robbery. So robbery, so number 1 for robbery is Oakland, California. But then District of Columbia, number 3 for robbery. Number 3 in the country, right? Here I was saying on Tuesday, see, this is why I need to pull up the graphics for you guys, because I'm even blowing my mind here. I said that DC lived around number 20 on the list when it came to crime. Boy, was I wrong when it comes to certain crimes, right? So rape, they're really far down. But murder, they were number 10. Robbery, they're number 3. Let's see aggravated assault. So aggravated assault, they are... Let's see. They might be kind of far down here. They're number 76 for aggravated assault. So not quite there. How about for property crime? So how about like burglary? How many people are getting burgled in DC? Let's see. So DC is number... I know, riveting content, guys. The vast silence here while I sort through this list. All right, DC does not make the top 50 for burglary. How about motor vehicle theft? Let's see. Oakland, California, number 1 for motor vehicle theft. Kansas City up there too, geez. All right, motor vehicle theft. DC does not make the top 30, it looks like. DC's number 36 for motor vehicle theft. And how about arson? Where's DC when it comes to arson? Wow, Eugene, Oregon. Wow, 2 cities in Oregon really high for arson. Let's see. DC also doesn't make the top 50, it looks like, for arson. Yeah. All right. So what do we say? They were high in murder, manslaughter. What do we say? Aggravated assault, or we say robbery? I think robbery. Was it robbery? Yeah, robbery number 3. Right. So to say that DC is not a violent place is hardly true. It certainly is a dangerous place to be at. Is it more dangerous than some parts of the country? No. It's not the most dangerous city in the country, but certainly not the least dangerous either. And it'll be interesting to see how this works out for DC bringing in the National Guard. I hope it does. And frankly, if this works out, I hope that states bring in their state guards into cities and get these places cleaned up, right? We're always talking about, oh my gosh, why don't people want to live in cities? Why people don't want to live in cities, right? It's because of reasons like this. It's because they're dangerous. They're dangerous places, right? You don't hear about a whole lot of murdering happening or robbery happening in the suburbs, to be completely honest with you. But in cities, you hear it happening all the time, especially you see DC number 3 for it, right? So I think this is a great decision by the Trump administration. I have no issue with this whatsoever. I hope it works out for them. I hope that the crime rates go down. Wouldn't it be crazy if bringing the National Guard, DC's crime rate just like plummeted and all the media had to say Trump was right to do that? Crazy. All right, we want to our next story. So this comes from The Washington Times. So U.S. producer prices surge in July. So U.S. producer prices surge in July as Trump tariffs push costs higher. Washington, D.C. wholesale... So Washington, this is where the article is coming from. So U.S. wholesale inflation surged unexpectedly last month, signaling that President Donald Trump's sweeping taxes on imports are pushing costs up and that higher prices for consumers may be on the way. So the Labor Department reported Thursday that its producer price index, which measures inflation before it hits consumers, rose 0.9% last month from June. Biggest jump in more than 3 years. Compared to a year earlier, wholesale prices rose 3.3%. The numbers were much higher than economists had expected. Prices rose faster for producers than consumers last month, suggesting that U.S. importers may, for now, be eating the cost of Trump's tariffs rather than passing them on to consumers. That may not last. Quote, it will only be a matter of time before producers pass those higher tariff-related costs onto the backs of inflation-wary consumers, wrote Christopher Rumpke, chief economist at FWD Bonds, a federal market research firm. Excluding volatile food and energy prices, so-called core producer prices rose 0.9% from June, biggest month-over-month jump since March 2022. Compared with a year ago, core wholesale prices rose 3.7% after posting a 2.6% year-over-year jump in June. So wholesale food prices rose 1.4% from June, led by a 38.9% surge in vegetable prices. The price of home electronic equipment gained 5% from June. Both are heavily imported in the U.S. The wholesale inflation report, 2 days after the Labor Department reported that consumer prices rose 2.7% last month from June 2024, same as the previous month and up from a post-pandemic low of 2.3% in April. Core consumer prices rose 3.1%, up from 2.9% in June. Both figures are above the Federal Reserve's 2% target. Wholesale prices can offer an early look at where consumer inflation might be heading. Economists also watched it because some of its components, notably measures of health care and financial services, flow into the Federal Reserve's preferred inflation gauge, the Personal Consumption Expenditure, or PCE index. So, I mean, this goes back to, I think, what we were covering a few days ago, in that, the Trump administration is calling, the hundreds of billions of dollars that we're bringing in tariff revenue a win for the U.S. economy, and that the tariffs are working. And a whole bunch of right-wingers came out and they were like, they all said the tariffs weren't going to work. They said the tariffs weren't going to do anything. And to that I replied, yeah, I never said that the tariffs were not going to bring money in. My concern always was, how is it going to raise prices? And are the countries that were tariffing really worth tariffing them, right? Didn't we just raise our tariffs on Canada, for example? Why are we raising our tariffs on Canada, right? So it's just the whole thing. If you really look into what's being tariffed and our trade agreements with those countries, a lot of them that we're tariffing really don't make sense, in my opinion. But that's just me. So, what I always said was like, yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see how prices are going to be increased, right? We're calling the hundreds of billions of dollars we're bringing into the U.S. economy this massive win for the government. Yeah, great, they're bringing in more money, but it's going to result in prices being raised on us. And I would be honestly shocked if a year from now I'm sitting here and saying that prices for goods have not gone up, assuming that the tariffs have not radically changed in the way that they're being carried out by the president. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. But all signs are pointing to prices being increased, right? Because there's only so long businesses are going to bite the tax they're having to pay on their goods being brought in before they're going to pass those along to the consumers. And I'm sure it's already happening, right? It's just probably going to be a few months until we really see that coming into the reports. But I'm sure anecdotally you have seen prices go up for certain things that you purchased, right? It just depends on where they're coming from and what they are. So let's move on to our last story. Now, this is some good news here. This is some good news. It's not cutting edge. It's not, blowing my mind or anything, but this is some good news towards our economy. So average rate on a 30-year mortgage drops to lowest since October of last year. So the average rate on a 30-year U.S. mortgage fell this week to its lowest level in nearly 10 months, giving prospective homebuyers a sorely needed boost in purchasing power that could help inject life into a stagnant housing market. The long-term rate fell to 6.58% from 6.63% last week. Mortgage buyer Freddie Mac said Thursday, a year ago, the rate averaged 6.49%. Borrowing costs on 15-year fixed-rate mortgages, popular with homeowners refinancing their home loans, also fell. The average rate dropped to 5.71% from 5.75% last week. A year ago, it was 5.66, Freddie Mac said. Elevated mortgage rates have helped keep the U.S. housing market in a sales slump since nearly 2022, when rates started to climb from the rock bottom lowest they reached during the pandemic. Home sales sank last year to the lowest level in nearly 30 years. This is the fourth week in a row that rates have come down. The latest average rate on a 30-year mortgage is now at the lowest level since October 24th, when it's averaged 6.54%. This is fantastic. So I have the mortgage chart right here. This is from the Federal Reserve Bank. So I have it right here. This is all time right now. So first off, I want to point out something. It's great that mortgages are going down, right? The rates are far too high than where they should be. They're still far higher than pre-COVID levels. They're even higher than they were during the 2008 recession, right? I mean, they're about, looking at this chart right here, they're about as high as they were back in like 2000, 2003, 2001 actually. So we've jumped back up there. As someone who does not currently own a home, this is really concerning to me, right? I want to see mortgage rates go down. I'd like to see them go down, maybe not at this very moment. I'd like to see them go down a lot by the time I'm looking to buy a house in a few years from now. So I'm hoping to be a proud homeowner by 2028, right? Sometime in the next 4 or so years, 3 to 4 years, I'd like to own a home, right? And so I'd love those interest rates to go down to where they were just before COVID. And I'm sure that that Trump will get us there, right? We had a great economy under Trump. Mortgage rates were low, and you'll notice, let's just look back at the past 10 years, right? So right now, we're sitting at 6.58 for a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage average in the United States. So here's COVID, this big menacing gray bar right here is COVID. Right before COVID, mortgage rates 3.74%, basically half of what they are now. And then we had some time go by. We got through COVID. Mortgage rates went down, 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 down. Now they got as low in 2021 as 2.76%, right? They got down, down. Oop, they went up a little bit. They went up a little bit. This is all Joe Biden here, guys. All Joe Biden. And all of a sudden, around December of 2021, they shot up. Shot up. They got as high, this is all Joe Biden, guys. They got as high as October 26th, 2023, 7.79%. Now, it came down a little bit. In September 2024, they came down to around 6.8, right? They came down about a whole percentage point, roughly. But nowhere near where they were during the Trump economy, or even where they got to under Joe Biden, right? I'll give Joe Biden his credit. He had the lowest mortgage rate that we've seen in the past 10 years during his presidency. Now, if you want to say that it was because of Trump's economy, go for it. But I'd love to see them get around this zone right here. This is great, right? This is so much more affordable. This is almost, I mean, this is a third of the price as it is now for interest on a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, right? And they've just shot up under Joe Biden. Awful. So I hope they go down, and I hope that Trump gets us there, because they did come down. You'll notice that Trump came into office January 2017, they were sitting around 4.19%. By the time he left office, they were sitting around, you know, let's see, let's find January 2021. January 2021, they were 2.65%. So actually, Donald Trump got them down even lower. Excuse me. They were continuing to go down, then Joe Biden shot them up. Sorry, I retract my previous statement. I misspoke. I missaw the number. Right? So when Donald Trump left office, they were super low. Now, that might be because of COVID, right? But let's even just look and say, you know, January 2020, they were at 3.67%. So they came down about half point to a whole point, depending on when you sample it, under Donald Trump. They went up a little bit towards the end of 2018. So, you know, it's good that they're going down. More people should own homes in this country. Anyways, with that, that is the end of today's episode, folks. I hope that you thoroughly enjoyed it, and we will see you back here on Tuesday for yet another episode. Make sure you share this lovely, amazing show with your friends, your family, your loved ones. You all sit around the TV at night and you watch me bring you the great, amazing news, right? And hope you enjoy it. If you have any suggestions, any comments for the show, you can send me a message on Twitter about it. You can comment on YouTube. You can comment on Rumble. Make sure you're subscribed on all of those platforms so you don't miss an episode. And yeah, keep an eye out for me. Share with friends. Let me know what's going on in your life. I hope you're all doing super good. I love all my viewers out there. And yeah, the more viewers we get, the even better this show will get. So keep putting it out there. Keep retweeting it. All of that. I appreciate all of you so much. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy your Friday. Enjoy your Saturday. Enjoy your Sunday. We'll be back here on Tuesday with yet another episode. And with that, I have been Nathan Hale. This has been Spin Cycle Live. Peace out. Bye.